Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS has refunds totaling $1.3 billion for people who have not filed a 2017 federal income tax return. IR 2021-75, April 5th, 2021, Washington. Unclaimed income tax refunds worth more than $1.3 billion await an estimated 1.3 million taxpayers who did not file a 2017 Form 1040. That's a 2017 Form 1040 federal income tax return, according to the Internal Revenue Service. So note that there typically is a statute of limitations in terms of when you can file and claim the refund. So if you're owed a refund, you want to make sure to file the tax return within a certain time frame to claim the refund, to get the refund. Also note that when asking whether or not you need to file a tax return, in other words, you might have the question of, I earned less than so much money, am I required to file a tax return? That question is different than, should I file the tax return, or would it be beneficial to me for filing a tax return? If you ask the question or look up the answer to, should I file a tax return, or am I required to file a tax return, you may well get an answer of no if your income is below a certain threshold. That basically means the IRS will not come after you if you don't file a tax return with your income below a certain threshold because you don't owe any taxes. Why would the IRS come after you? They're not, they're not going to say, hey, you didn't file your taxes, even though you don't owe us any money. It's probably not worth their time. However, that's a different question as to, is it beneficial for me to file the tax return? And there could be circumstances where you're not required to, but you'd still benefit. You'd still get a refund. One would be, if you worked, you got W-2 income, they withheld the money from your W-2 income, and they sent it to the IRS as well as the state, but it wasn't that much money, so you're still not required to file. You would get that refund back then if you didn't owe any taxes. In order to get it back, you'd have to file the taxes. Now, note, you might be saying, that was a small amount. Maybe I didn't work that much in 2017. The refund is quite small. It might not be worth my time to file the taxes. Well, one, you mind be able to file the taxes for free. I know there's resources for the 2020 tax return. Maybe a little bit more difficult to find free resources for prior years, but you might be able to do it. And also, you could be eligible for things other than just what has been withheld. And that makes me think also that this number of the $1.3 billion, I'm not sure exactly how they come to that estimate, because it might just be what has been withheld, not including things like refundable tax credits. If you have a refundable tax credit, or possibly have a refundable tax credit, a credit that you could then be getting even if your income is like zero, or you can still get a refund below any tax that you owe. And that would be things like an earned income tax credit or possibly a child tax credit. And those things could differ from year to year. But note, if you have a refundable tax credit, it still might be worth to file a tax return. You could get a substantial amount of money back, even though you didn't have much withheld and even though you don't really owe any taxes. So keeping that in mind, you might want to take a look if you haven't filed your 2017 tax return or later than that to see if you want to file those tax returns, if it would be worthwhile to do so. Quote, the IRS wants to help taxpayers who are due refunds but haven't filed their 2017 tax returns yet, end quote, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig. Quote, time is quickly running out for these taxpayers. There's only a 3-year window to claim these refunds, and the window closes on May 17th. We want to help people get these refunds, but they will need to quickly file a 2017 tax return, end quote. The IRS estimates the midpoint for a potential refunds for 2017 to be $865. So they're estimating $865. I'm not sure exactly where they come up with that number either. And again, I'm not sure if they're taking into consideration just withholdings that they have for people that haven't filed, or taking into consideration things that like potential tax credits that could be refundable, like an earned income tax credit and so on. But that's what they're coming up with the average here. So that's the midpoint. One more time. The IRS estimates the midpoint for the potential refunds for 2017 to be $865. That is, half the refunds are more than $865 and half are less. In cases where a federal income tax return was not filed, the law provides most taxpayers with a 3-year window of opportunity to claim the tax refund. So that's kind of your statute of limitations. You got the 3 years to file to get the refund. Typically, that's the general rule. If they do not file a tax return within 3 years, the money becomes the property of the U.S. Treasury. they just kind of consume it. It gets sucked up and then it disappears into like the ether, and that's obviously no good for anybody generally. So in any case, for 2017 tax returns, the window closes May 17, 2021 for most taxpayers. The law requires taxpayers to properly address, mail, and ensure the tax return is postmarked by that date. The IRS reminds taxpayers seeking a 2017 tax refund that their checks may be half if they have not filed tax returns for 2018 and 2019. So, in other words, they might hold, if you're required to file for 2018 and 2019, or if you have payments that are due to you and you file 2017 and you should get a refund, the IRS may hold on to that if they suspect that you owe them money for some other components, and then they'll hold on to it typically. But you'll still benefit from it because in that case, it might be paying down a potential liability in that case. So in addition, the refund will be applied to any amounts still owed to the IRS or a state tax agency and may be used to offset unpaid child support or past due federal debts such as student loans. So they may generously take your money and pay off things that you owe instead of giving it to you to then hopefully do the same thing possibly. But in any case, by failing to file a tax return, people stand to lose more than just their refunds of taxes withheld or paid during 2017. Many low and moderate income workers may be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit, the EITC. That's the refundable tax credit we were talking about. For 2017, the credit was worth as much as $6,318. The EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, helps individuals and families whose incomes are below the certain thresholds. The thresholds for 2017 were $48,340 or $53,930 if married filing jointly for those with 3 or more qualifying children. So this is the credit that does depend to some degree on the children. It's a complicated type of credit. You typically want tax software in order to help you to calculate it for the most part, because although it is targeting and applied to people with lower incomes, it is kind of complex because it's trying to help people or incentivize people to work by basically having the credit actually increase as the income level goes up, and then it hits a threshold and then goes back down after they go above a certain threshold. That makes it a little bit complex to calculate. It also is going to be dependent to some degree on the number of children, typically 0 to 3. You don't need children in order to qualify for the credit, but the credit typically will be larger if there's children, dependent children involved, typically up to 3 of them. So that's going to be the threshold. Here, if we had the 45,007 is the threshold, or 50,597 if married filing jointly for people with 2 qualifying children, and 39,617 or 45,207 if married filing jointly for those with 1 qualifying child, and finally 15,010 or 20,600 if married filing jointly for people without qualifying children. Current and prior year tax returns, such as the tax year 2017 Form 1040, Form 1040A, and Form 1040EZ, and instructions are available on the irs.gov website, Forms and Publications page, or by calling toll-free 800-TAX-FORM 800-829-3676. So I won't read that 10 times. You can go to the link and check this out if you want to find that number. There is a link here to the forms and publications as well. Taxpayers who are missing, and by the way, if you are filing and looking for that earned income tax credit, you can do it with the instructions and whatnot, but it really would be nice if you can get access to software to help you out with that one. But in any case, any way you can get it done, probably worthwhile to do it and look into it if it's applicable. Taxpayers who are missing Forms W-2, 1098, 1099, or 5498 for the years 2017, 2018, or 2019 should request copies from their employer, bank, or other payer. Taxpayers who are unable to get missing forms from their employer or other payer can order a free wage and income transcript at irs.gov using the Get Transcript online tool. So in other words, you might be saying, hey, I'd like to file 2017. I think it might benefit me, but that's like a long time ago. I don't have any of that tax documentation anymore, and I don't work for half the places I worked for in 2017, and I really don't want to talk to them at this point. Then you should probably call them and see if they can get it to you. That'd be the first place to go. But when they send the W-2s out, they also send it to the IRS. So the IRS already has the W-2, right? They already have it. They could probably build your tax return from their side without you filing anything. They almost certainly could at least give a good guess on it, but they won't do that. You got to file your own taxes. So you could go to them and say, could you give me the information that my employer gave to you? Because I don't want to talk to them, and that was like a long time ago. And you could get a transcript, and then the transcript is what you can then use to fill out your taxes, and then you could do your taxes that way. So it is quite possible, you know, to get a good amount of information, 1099 information, W-2 information, actually from the IRS for prior years, due to the fact that IRS requires forms like W-2s, 1099s to not only be sent to you, the taxpayer, but what they really want is for the forms to be sent to them on the IRS side. So they should have that. You might be able to and should be able to get access to them. There's a link to the Get Transcript tool here. Alternatively, they can file a Form 4506T to request a wage and income transcript. A wage and income transcript shows data from information returns received by the IRS, such as Forms W-2, 1099, 1098, Form 5498, and IRA contribution information. Taxpayers can use the information from the transcript to file their tax return. First-time filers and EIP eligible. The IRS reminds first-time filers and those who usually don't file a federal filing requirement that they must file a 2020 tax return to claim the Recovery Rebate Credit, the RRC, and there's a link to that here, if they were eligible but did not receive the first and second economic impact payments or receive less than the full amounts. So remember, we're on EIP, or Economic Impact Payment 3, which is a little different than EIP 1 and EIP 2. EIP 1 and EIP 2 are thought of as prepayments to a credit that's on the 2020 tax return, that called the Recovery Rebate Credit. The EIP 3 might be based on 2020 or 2019 as an estimate, but you would think it would actually be tied to the 2021 tax return if they mirror the same kind of process. Therefore, if you don't file, if you haven't filed your tax return, and you don't typically file, and you haven't filed since 2017, then if the IRS didn't have your information, it's possible they didn't send you an EIP payment. In that case, you would need to file the 2020 tax return to recover that, or to get the recovery rebate credit, which should solve that problem. And then the IRS should have the information at that point in order to give the EIP 3 out, because that will not be tied to the 2020 tax return, but they're using 2020 to estimate what the third payment should be as that goes out. So the IRS offers free options to prepare and file a return at howtofile@irs.gov. So there's a link to that here. Now note, there's free options for the software. I don't think you can get the free software for prior years like 2017. I'm not sure. You might want to take a look at that. It's worth taking a look at. But for 2020, if your income is below a certain threshold, you could get access to pretty, the top of the line, the main big brand softwares out there possibly, who are offering a free portion for people whose income levels are below a certain threshold. So taxpayers who receive the full amounts of both EIPs cannot claim the recovery rebate credit and should not include any information about the payments on their 2020 tax return. State-by-state estimates of individuals who may be due 2017 income tax refunds. So here's a state-by-state breakdown of the refunds that possibly could be going out. So you can check out your state. I won't read them all here, but there's a nice table that they provide with quite a bit of money on a per state basis, scrolling down, and that's going to be it. So there'll be links to some of the information here in this, and there'll be links to this in the description.